My name is Dan Pew. I'm 34 years old. I was born in Youngstown, Ohio. I celebrated 7 years in recovery on April 30th, 2022. I am from Canfield, but I grew up in Youngstown in the Canfield area. I do work in the treatment field. I work for Parkland Recovery Center, First Step Recovery, and Travco Behavioral Health as the Director of Community Outreach. An interesting fact about me is I am a certified yoga instructor. I've been teaching for about 9 months, and it's a huge passion of mine is the mindfulness space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very, very cool. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
So let's just get started right at the beginning. So we'll talk about your childhood, what it was like. Did you grow up with both of your parents? Did you experience trauma? Did you have siblings? That kind of thing.
Sure. So I am an only child, so that's an interesting variable. I always say that my grandmother used to say that you're not spoiled, you're just loved a lot, which meant that I was incredibly spoiled as a child. Both of my parents at some point in their lives have struggled with substances, alcohol, drugs. So I grew up as the cute kid on the block with the blue eyes and the long blonde hair, and I was incredibly great at sports, so I was this popular little kid. My father, I learned very quickly, was different than some of the other fathers. So when you sleep over your friend's house and you start noticing things that are different than your house, and my father's room smelled like, something that I was unfamiliar with this. So it sparked some interest in me, and this was a time where DARE was very prevalent in the elementary schools. I remember seeing by the principal's office one of the pictures that had, drugs and alcohol and different paraphernalia on it, and I said, and made a mental note that my dad has some of those things in his bedroom. So I think it was about maybe 5 or 6 where I realized that there was something a little bit different. So we fast forward to a little bit of middle school, and peer pressure, and you start learning about different things that people are going to be doing and things like that. And I had learned that, he did some substances. It was kind of confirmed somewhere along that lines. We get into about 8th grade is when things got a little bit different. 8th grade going into 9th grade, and, kids are starting to have parties and drinking and things like that. And one of my friends had asked me, he was like, hey, can we look around the house? And I said, sure. So we found a lot of things that we shouldn't have found, and they asked me to take these things and sell them to them. So that was kind of my introduction into this different world. So for me, looking back, I see that I had this opportunity to become even more liked and communicated with by my peers. So I took that and I ran with it. So it seemed like for a path that I didn't really know what I was going down. I just wanted to be liked by those around me, so I chose to do this. I didn't smoke cigarettes, I didn't drink alcohol, I didn't touch any of these substances until I did. And as soon as I opened that door, my addictive tendencies and the way that I thought about everything shifted. So these morals and these values that I thought that I held on to so dearly were kind of just shattered. So with a young, prepubescent mind and this immaturity that I had, it kind of shifted my personality in a way that, looking back, it just wasn't who I really was at that time. So, school kind of ends and I'm just kind of working and things like that. So at this point in time, I'm 19 years old. I'm living at home in the basement. And my disease is not doing well. I had gotten into a little bit of trouble with some handcuffs finally right before I turned 18, so I was still a minor at that time. So I had some run-ins with my substances, and my parents and I we've battled a little bit by now with the disease. Towards the end of that summer, my dad had got himself into some legal trouble because of his disease. He had got arrested, and things were a little bit serious. His full-time job was to take care of my mentally disabled foster brother, Timmy. So for my dad, he got to stay home every day, all day long, and be at the house. Well, that was perfect for his disease. It was it was some traumatic, life dynamic and family dynamic that was kind of going on all at that same time. October 27th of 2007, I was woken up at 5 a.m. in the basement, and my mother was screaming that my dad wasn't breathing. So as a 19-year-old kid, I run up the steps, run into his bedroom, and his parents were standing there in his bedroom. And he was in the bed, and my mom's standing there, and everyone's looking at me, and I knew he was dead. Right there in that moment, I could just tell by the way that he looked and everything. It's just this moment that's frozen in time for me, that's really raw and powerful to put myself back in there. The paramedics and the police were pulling in, and my mom pushed my grandparents out of the way, and she pulled me into the hallway, and she said, the police are going to be back here. I don't want them to find these things. And she handed me all these drugs and told me to go into the bathroom and flush them. Well, for me, I couldn't be in that reality that was going on. So I went into the bathroom and I took every drug that I had been given. So that's where my disease was at the age of 19. And, went through the funeral and all these things, and I was never really the same after that moment. So my disease obviously escalated from that moment on. Now I have this card that I can play to every single person in my life. You don't know what it's like. Don't tell me not to do these substances. My dad died. I played that song every single day. Years fell off the calendar of me living in the basement. I categorized myself as a loser. I hung out with people that I shouldn't have been hanging out with. I did things that I shouldn't have been doing. A lot happened. It was just, things were just terrible. It just really was. I was just this, the Charlie Brown with his head down walking around. That's really what my life was like. So fast forward to, April of 2015, I was working a job. I had just gotten kicked out the night before, again, for the, how manyth ever time she's kicked me out. I go to work 6-7 hours late. The boss is sitting there, sends me home because I'm obviously high. My excuse is I've been crying, poor me, woe is me kind of thing. I decided to go buy myself a new phone. I go to AT&T. They don't let me buy a phone. I go sit outside. Cops rush past me to go inside. I'm like, wonder what's going on. And then they come back outside and they're like, sir, can we talk to you for a minute? I'm like, sure. Why not? They're like, well, we have reports of someone crawling around on the floor and under the influence. And I'm like, I didn't see anyone. I didn't see anybody in there. Well, I learned very quickly that was me. I was that person. So they wanted to talk to me a little bit more and check my person and what kind of things that I had maybe have in my pocket. They found some felonies in my pocket. I told them that these were not my pants. They didn't really believe me. And then they said, where's your car? And I said, I don't have a car, which was my mom's car. But, and it's just strange the way that, for me, I feel it was this higher power moment of, the energy and the universe was putting me in these positions. Mm-hmm. I left my windows down all the way with the doors unlocked with a box of substances sitting on the front desk, on the front seat. So I was obviously arrested for some felonies and some misdemeanors, and they took me to jail. Still in my fantasy life, I think I'm going to go to jail. Mom's going to come pick me up. It didn't go exactly that way. I went to jail. I detoxed in jail, and it was horrific. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely horrific. I'm crying on the phone, calling her every few moments, and there was this moment where I think I was on the phone with her, and she stopped me, and she said, hey, do you realize that you haven't apologized to me? And I don't want to say the light bulb went off, but I think for the first time in over a decade, I heard her. Like I really heard the pain in her voice. I heard the disappointment. I heard the fear, and it landed with me. And I went to court, and they said you had three options. You take the charges, you do the time, you do ILC, or you do drug court. I don't know what came over me in that moment, but I asked, which one is the most difficult? And they said drug court. I said, sign me up. Sign me up. Once I came back, I jumped full in. I learned a lot in treatment, and I was ready. But something that I always talk about is I heard somebody say something to me in treatment that changed the course of my path. Sitting outside, again, I'm the guy with my head down. I don't want to be there. I'm sad. Woe is me. And we're outside smoking cigarettes before one of the groups. And I, of course, say I don't want to go. And somebody says, hey, Dan, you don't have to go. So I kick my feet up, I light up another cigarette, and I go, great, I'll stay out here. And he looked at me and he was like, you really don't have to be here. You can leave at any time. You don't have to do this. And he said, Dan, you get to do this. And it was that moment for me that he said that you get to be alive today. You get to be a person. You get to set yourself up for success. And I just heard that. I integrated myself into recovery. I put myself around positive people. And, those first 2 years were all about the discovery of what's inside. You know, for me, you know, I knew that I had to get off the substances, but like, how do I not go back to that? How do I not let anxiety, fear, and all of these negative emotions get me to the point where I want to run away and escape reality? So that's what I was searching for. And it took 2-3 years to really kind of find that stuff. And that's where the mindfulness piece for me really came in. I was so ridden with anxiety at the beginning. I didn't want to go to meetings. I definitely didn't want to ask guys for their phone number. I didn't want to read a book. I didn't want to write about myself. I didn't want to do any of these things, but I knew that I had to, so I changed my perspective and I changed my attitude towards all of this stuff. And I just said, if it's going to keep me alive and if it's going to keep me growing into the better person that I know that I can become, I'm going to do all these things. I opened the door to look and see what else in that space could be beneficial for me. So I ran with that. I started incorporating meditation into all of these other things inside the recovery space. At around 90 days, I started taking H&I into different facilities and speaking and sharing my story. And, you know, someone told me that you know, I had some skill in speaking to others and possibly motivating them. So they said, you know, why don't you try working in treatment? And, you know, I started working in the treatment field. And, you know, I built my career up to the point where I get to work with community partners and I get to do outreach, and I work for 3 different companies that do an incredible array of services. And it's just, for me, this isn't work. I'm still following my purpose and my passion. And if I utilize all of the skills and the tools that I've learned early on, it's just my life's plan. It's just what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And, you know, along the road, you know, I met my wife, and in recovery, I've built so many positive support systems around me that I can talk about my feelings today. I can talk about my shortcomings. I can work on my defects, and I put myself in positions to succeed. So it's just come full circle with everything that really started me. To be able to find the successful piece that I was looking for, that I can continue to give it back to others.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, that's really everything, you know, that I've been looking for, is just being okay with myself.
Yeah.
That was what I wanted from recovery.
Right. You said you struggled with that from a young age. So yeah, that's interesting.
Absolutely.
So how's your relationship with your mom?
So my relationship with my mom has been just incredible. It's so awesome. It really is. You know, we had built a relationship that was on codependency and enabling, and we both played into each other's, you know, negative sides. So we really had to learn how to communicate differently and how to work together. And, you know, she's just been my biggest supporter and my cheerleader on my side. And, you know, she's always there for me. And you know, we've always been close, but obviously me being a person in recovery, it's made our relationship that much better. Right. And she's so supportive. And, you know, she was there when I got married, and it was just an incredible achievement to be able to, you know, for me, I know that she doesn't have to go to bed worrying anymore. You know, she's had enough trauma in her life, losing her husband, losing family members to the disease. You know, my foster brother Timmy had passed away in that time when I was clean, and just a lot of trauma. And, you know, she lost herself for a little bit, and it's incredible to watch her to build herself back up and put the pieces back together for her.
For sure.
It's awesome.
And what have you learned from your addiction?
Yeah. What I've learned from my addiction was that, without a doubt, this is a brain disease. And it's, you know, for me, I've learned so much about the science behind it that it makes sense now why I couldn't just stop harming myself and other people. You know, I've learned that, you know, there is a good person behind every single disease of addiction. And it's on us to see that in other people. It's on us to educate ourselves on the disease of addiction, what it does to families, what it does to that person, what it does to the people around us in our communities, and what what I always want to continue to do is to be a positive advocate so that people learn that this disease is not just a choice that someone made someday. I made a lot of choices in my life. None of them was ever to become a person addicted to drugs. That's something that I told myself I would never do, and I ended up doing exactly what I said I would never do. So I've learned so much more about that, and educating myself and being a support system to educate other people is always what I want to participate in.
It's such an important piece. And for somebody out there struggling right now, do you have any words of hope that you could share?
Absolutely. If you're out there struggling right now with substance use and where you are lost, just know that the most important thing that you can do is give yourself the opportunity to find some peace and some freedom from that active addiction. Is just reach out. It's as simple as that. It's reach out and make yourself available to become an opportunity for success.
Absolutely, and that's beautiful advice. Make yourself available. I love that. All right, so we covered a lot here today, this afternoon. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on that maybe I didn't ask you before we wrap up?
I think really the only thing that I would add would be is, if there's any men out there that don't feel that the mindfulness and yoga piece can be beneficial, for me it was the missing key. It was the missing link, was the mindfulness that I could connect with myself and be still and set up those moments of pause. Because for me, the meditation was the game changer. All of my anxiety, fear, nervousness, I don't have it anymore. And it's because I was willing to set myself up to learn more about spirituality, learn more about mindfulness and meditation and yoga, and really get down to my limiting beliefs. Because my limiting belief was that I wasn't worth it, that I'm not good enough to do any of these things, and that I'm always going to be anxious and nervous and unprepared, and I should just not put myself in a situation to succeed. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's what I always talk to people about, is educate yourself more on meditation. And people always tell me, well, I don't know how to meditate. And if you just make the attempt to meditate, that's meditation. So for me, that's what I always want to communicate to other people that are closed-minded to it, is just always set yourself up to be educated and learn more on anything, not just meditation and yoga and mindfulness and addiction and recovery. Just for me, I always want to continue to learn things about other people and myself and anything to do to be successful in this world.
For sure. That's a good point. Well, Dan, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, amazing story with us today. You are just an awesome human being. I can just tell. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.